rejoice. Not only are we together for water communion, but we'd like to introduce to you our new Religious Exploration Director, Trista Emma. This is a momentous occasion. We have been over a decade without someone serving in this role, and this is an exciting new time for our congregation. You're going to be hearing more about what that means next week, where we'll really devote a lot of what we're talking about in our worship together to what does this mean to have a director of religious exploration. And we'll unpack that and celebrate that next week. But for now, she has a special story to tell about a very dry time.
Yes, indeed. So normally I know that the young and the young at heart are invited down, but because we have our beautiful altar here with water, I'm going to invite you all to just stay in your place today. And I want to tell you the story about a very brave tortoise. Now we're starting halfway through. At this moment when the story starts, Tortoise has been toiling all night, all day, up a steep mountain in search of water. She had left her friends below in a dry desert valley. Poor Frog had been so dry that they had to create a tiny little pond for him and pour most of their water into that pond. Tortoise had volunteered to go back up to the mountain in search of water with a large clay jar, the last of their 2 water jars, tied to her back. She had toiled long, all day long. She finally reached the water at the top of the mountain, and with a big sigh, she bit through the ropes holding the jar to her back and filled the jar up with water. And then she realized she had no hands. She had no way to get the jar back up onto her back, so she had to take a deep breath and realize that she had to push the jar back down the mountain. Tortoise was so tired. She carried the jar all the way up the mountain, and she really just wanted to take a rest, but she was worried about her thirsty friends in the desert below. So she took a deep breath, climbed into the water behind the jar, and began slowly pushing the jar down the mountain. She was so tired, she was dragging herself along step after tired step, all the way through the night, down the mountain, so tired, so slow. Finally, as the first flush of sunrise lit up the sky, Tortoise came to the bottom of the mountain, and she saw her community of friends waiting there, sleeping, dry, desiccated. She was so excited that she'd finally reached them with the water that she started to try to hurry a little, and as she tried to hurry a little, she lifted up her feet and she tripped over the jar that she'd been pushing all night. And with a heavy, swooshy, watery noise, her shell hit the clay jar and cracked it, and all the water spilled out before her and soaked into the parched ground. Tortoise was so sad. She was so tired. And she did something that tortoises don't do. She started to cry. And she pulled down under her shell, and she was crying. And as she was crying, it got more and more wet around her. She could feel the moisture, and she was a little confused. She's like, tortoises don't normally cry this much. I don't know where all of this water is coming from. But she just kept sobbing because she had failed. Her friends, sleeping as the sun went into the sky, they were mostly animals, and they could smell the water. And as they woke up to the scent of water, they could see water flowing down, and in the middle of the water flowing was Tortoise. And they all woke up and they cheered, "Yay, Tortoise, you brought the water!" Tortoise came out of her shell and she looked around. She goes, "Well, these aren't my tears. Where did this water come from?" And as she turned around, she realized that as she had been dragging her shell down the mountain, her shell had carved a ditch, bringing the water in behind her. And all the animals cheered, "Hooray, Tortoise, what are you going to do with all of your water?" Tortoise said, "This isn't my water, I brought it for all of us." So together, they worked out a series of agreements of how they would use this water in the desert. They would use water for food, but they would use water for beauty. They would use water for playing, and they would use water responsibly to share through the community. And as they were working on these agreements, Tortoise began to get a little worried that perhaps they were taking too much water from the creatures in the mountains. So they sent a little group to follow back her ditch to talk with the creatures in the mountains. And together they worked out an agreement where they were equally sharing in the water. And the community in the desert and the community in the mountains became tied through that blue river of water.
She had no idea that she was about to transform a community, not only bringing them abundant water, but offering them a new way of being, a collective life together of sharing and mutual care, a life of covenant. She was making channels for the streams of love to flow. As we gather here this morning, this congregation is on the cusp of its 25th anniversary as a chartered congregation in the Unitarian Universalist Association. One could say that our founding members, some of whom are here today, were the desert tortoises who brought a liberal, progressive community here to Ogden. They toiled hard to dig those channels for the streams of love to flow. Would those who are here who were among those founding members please stand up so that we can recognize you? And there's at least a couple of them here. Yeah, Bev, and Evelyn. Hello. Yes, desert tortoises. Bet you never thought you'd be compared to a tortoise. Their dedication to our Unitarian Universalist faith over a quarter century helped to create this vibrant congregation, procured this wonderful building, this wonderful church home, founded the Outreach Resource Center for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender youth, and now supported, yet again now, a new religious exploration director. Yes, yes, and throughout all these years, you collectively have lived in sacred covenant For our faith is not based on a common belief system about the big questions in life and about the nature of the universe, but rather its power is in our common agreement to walk together in love. Just like the Desert Tortoises community, this congregation has learned to share its resources and manage them wisely for the mutual care of all. This kind of sacred covenanting is a special kind of promise to each other, that we're not in it for ourselves, but rather for the good of the entire community. You don't come to church to get something, you come to church to give something. When you're part of this community, it's fully expected and understood that you will be freely sharing of yourself, your energy, your talents, your passions, your ideas, your opinions, your dreams, and yes, of course, your worldly goods. For these channels have been dug well and long for the streams of love to flow and flow as we create a caring community that learns together about the ways of love and justice and works to build a world based on these values. As we bring our waters together today, know that we are gathering them to fill these streams of love with an ever-flowing source of caring for each other, sharing with each other, and learning from one another more and more each day. May we live together well and long in sacred covenant and in deep promise that our sacred gathered waters of love and passion for justice will never run dry. May it be so. A small portion will be added to our sacred bowls that you see up on our altars. That little goblet that you see there holds that little bit of our Unitarian Universalist holy water. As we each week release our stones of burden or forgiveness or release, we are reminded that the sacred gathered community holds us with compassion and mercy. The sacred gathered water will also be used for child dedications and as we welcome new members into the community, and even to anoint those who are sick and those who are dying. This year, as you come forward to pour your water, we ask that you silently contemplate how you will be sharing yourself in this community this year, in this church year to come. Pour those intentions into the bowl with your water, as well as your prayer of commitment into this communal bowl.